Hello, my name's Owen. I'm the photography technician at West Kent College. The idea of these videos is to give advice on technical problems which students often ask about. One area that people often get mixed up with is image sizing, so in this video we're going to be having a look at that. We'll be concentrating in this first video on how to use the image size function in Photoshop. Then the second we'll look at the way you can use the crop tool, again in Photoshop. And then finally we'll be looking at the way sizing works in Lightroom. I hope you find this video useful. I've opened an image from a 24 megapixel DSLR, and what you see here is the whole thing. If I zoom in, you can see the individual pixels of the image. So this is around 2000% or 20 times magnification. And you can see the zoom percentage down here at the bottom left. Of course, zooming in like this has no effect on the actual image, only on how you see it on the screen. So now we'll zoom out to the full image again and open image size, which is here in the image menu. At the top you'll see the total size of the image in megabytes. Next down we have the dimensions of the image, which is only for information. You can't change anything from there. If you click on the options, you can choose to see percent, pixels, inches and so on, but the default is to see pixels, as that's really what the image is made up of. Anyway, whatever you choose, it won't affect the image. The action part of the image size dialog is really the next three sections: the width, the height and the resolution. With width and height you can choose what units to use. I usually prefer to use millimeters, so I'm going to switch to that. You'll see that both width and height values change as I switch units. Next down is resolution, which is measured in either pixels per inch, or you can switch to pixels per centimetre. I'm not quite sure why, but most people, myself included, prefer pixels per inch, even when they're measuring the image in metric. So the resample checkbox is really where you choose how the image size controls are going to work. If this box is checked, like it is here, then any changes you make to the width, height or resolution mean your image will be changed by Photoshop. If we hover the cursor over the resample checkbox, the pop-out hint says interpolate the pixel information. In other words, Photoshop's going to do some work on your pixels, guessing where and how they should be arranged. If the box isn't ticked, then the changes you make won't make Photoshop process the image at all. No pixels will be added or taken away. So with the resample box checked again, if we reduce the pixels, let's say by reducing the width to 200 millimeters, the image size will get smaller. This new image size is shown here, just under 7 megabytes, with the original size 68.8 megabytes in brackets. You can also see here what your new pixel dimensions will be. In this case 1890 by 1256 pixels. What doesn't change as we change the image width is the resolution, which stays at its original 240 pixels per inch. I'll undo that and then add pixels. Just to show what happens, I'll try a mad 10,000 millimeters or 10 meters width. You'll see the image size at the top will be a ridiculous 16.6 gigabytes, and Photoshop shows the new pixel dimensions here. The image would be over 90,000 pixels wide. Again, as we increase the image width, the resolution stays at its original 240 pixels per inch. But for now we're going to try reducing the image size, which is something that's probably a lot more usual. Going back to the width box, I'm going to enter a really small value, just 20 millimeters, so that we can see some really chunky pixels at super low resolution. Here the image size is going to be just under 70 kilobytes rather than 70 megabytes, with image dimensions of just 189 by 126 pixels. As I hit OK, the image shrinks on screen to its new size. But if we zoom in so it fills the screen, the pixels are really obvious. May be interesting visually, but probably not something you'd want to print. I'm going to undo that resizing and reopen the image size dialog. So now we'll have a look at what happens with the resampled tick box unchecked. You may have noticed a kind of chain graphic next to the width and height values. When that's checked, it means the width and height ratio is locked. In other words, you can't change one without changing the other. If I toggle resample on and off, you'll see how the width, the height, and now also the resolution become linked to each other. If we now change the width, again, I'm going to use a really silly value of 20 millimeters, you'll see the height changes as you'd expect, but this time the resolution also changes to a whopping 7,600 plus pixels per inch. Because Photoshop isn't doing any resampling, the image size is unchanged. So why would you actually want to change the image size? Reducing the image size like we did the first time by resampling the image is useful if you want to use the image on a website or upload it to social media like Facebook or WhatsApp. If you have a modern DSLR, the raw images will be 20 to 50 megapixels, which is really wasted online, especially if people are going to look at your images on a phone. For Facebook, I'd suggest maybe 2000 pixel width is about right, as they'll scrunch anything larger down to that size anyway. Around that size is good for emailing too, unless you expect the image to be printed out at the other end. As far as increasing the image size goes, there's not often any point. In theory, if you res up an unsharp image and then carefully sharpen it, it might print a bit crisper, but in practice this doesn't often help that much. Resizing by changing the dimensions, that is the physical width and height, but not changing the image size, can be useful. Here I'm going to resize this image so that it will print 200 millimeters width, giving a good wide border on A4. The resolution goes up to 700 pixels per inch, but because resample isn't checked, the file size stays the same and Photoshop doesn't have to do any processing. Higher resolution within reason isn't really an issue. If we go to the print dialog and make sure A4 paper is chosen, you can see there's a good wide border around the image. And you've still got the option of filling the paper by simply selecting Scale to Fit Media further down the print dialog window. What file format you use to save your images, Photoshop, TIFF, JPEG or whatever, is obviously really important, and we'll be covering that in a separate video. I hope you found this video helpful, and do look out for the following ones covering resizing using the Photoshop crop tool, and then resizing using the Lightroom export function. Thank you.